Alright, so as the intro said, it's free agent time, and we are trading a few of our key Pokemon in order to pick up a couple others before week 1 begins. Unfortunately, and this is really heartbreaking, I think giving up our first pick Ogerpon allows me to free up a lot of points and make some changes to the team that I think will help overall, because one thing I felt like I noticed in my draft is with Ogerpon, I have 2 very speedy Pokemon, and not so much in terms of speed control. The fact that I do not have a premier Trick Room setter, I think needed to change. I was able to free up a few points by trading Ogerpon for Sinistea. Sinistea still maintains that grass typing, right? Hospitality works incredibly well with Pokemon like Tinglu and Dondozo. It's also another way to mitigate damage with Machigacho burns. Between that and Burning Bulwark, I can utilize Tinglu's ability to lower special attack and then have the burn lower physical attacks, right? That way they can't just swap out of Intimidate. From there, we're losing our little friend Charjabug. This one, while a really great choice in terms of typing and access to things like Electro Web and that battery ability, we had a couple extra points. I think it allows me to do something pretty unique with my team when you make that trade. With those extra points, we were able to grab Morgrem. Having Prankster alongside moves like Reflect and Light Screen, as well as Thunderwave, Taunt, gives me the freedom to be a bit more defensive with my team. I think that's overall the theme of this one, is try and build up defenses and keep the game lasting longer so that if I am not able to set up Tailwind or Trick Room, I can at least respond in kind. And our final trade is we're losing our Alcremie. While the Decorate ability is incredibly good and something that works with most of my team, there was one Pokemon in particular it just didn't quite vibe with, and that was Golden Go. It didn't work with Golden Go's Good as Gold ability, and even though those two coming into the same game wouldn't have been as common, so I needed to make a change, and I had picked up Morgrem for the fairy type. Being able to swap this out for a different Pokemon felt right. So we dropped Alcremie, we went ahead and swapped it out for an Orthworm. Orthworm gives us a lot more in terms of defense typings. It works really well in Trick Room, so even if we don't end up using it on our Sinistea, having so many Pokemon with low speed will force our opponents to think twice before bringing in any sort of Trick Room user themselves. So this is a bit of redundancy in terms of the Trick Room nature of the team, and gives us even more defenses with that ability. Earth Eater, I've got a lot of Earthquake users. I think that the grass typing of Sinistea and the Earth Eater ability is another way to help kind of solidify my team. And you'll kind of notice it here with the updated graph, is we have now dealt with a lot of our weaknesses. We are losing a few types. Obviously, we don't have Electric Bug anymore, but those were only in the 1-point range. Everything else is pretty much covered in terms of our team coverage. I think I really wanted to focus in on having a wider range of speed tiers and being able to utilize both Tailwind and Trick Room. So I think these 3 are really good additions to the team. Making these changes will hopefully help things out in the later weeks. I mean, Sinistea especially, which I ended up bringing in this first week. Looking at Sinistea, we really wanted to focus in on the healing aspect. I think that was something that, given how defensive my team was, having Life Dew and a Citrus Berry might have felt like a little bit of overkill, but when you have a move like Rage Powder, you want to make sure it survives. Our first week we're going up against RSD4, and looking at some of their team, it's apparent that we need to be able to interact with a lot of their special attackers. Inside Trick Room, Iron Hands obviously is a bit of a threat, and same with that Blood Moon Ursaluna. So looking at Golden Go, having that Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam felt very necessary against this matchup. There weren't many fairy resistances at all on RSD4's team, and a few weaknesses from fairy, so I tried to take advantage of that with my Golden Go build. Obviously, with Nasty Plot, Life Orb, and Terra Fairy, we can do quite a bit of damage. Up next, we have our Gouging Fire. We've spec'd it in a way that it will get a boost from speed with that photosynthesis and that booster energy. Fairy Terra is a bit more defensive here, and having access to Burning Bulwark and Dragon Dance kind of puts our opponent in an awkward position to try and decide whether or not they are going to use something like a Fake Out into that slot, or if they're going to allow me to get up a Dragon Dance, increase my Gouging Fire's attack. Galarian Zapdos is the next one where I wanted to be able to be as offensive as possible, and rather than committing a Terra Ghost, we went with Terra Fire because of things like Magmar and Fletchinder having access to Will-O-Wisp. I didn't want to get burned from that Flame Body, and so committing the Covert Cloak, that item slot to deal with Fake Out, instead allows us to either set up Tailwind or use Coaching to boost the attack of our Gouging Fire or Dondozo. Still be pretty defensive as well. Next is our Dondozo, which is running quite a unique set. This week we invested heavily into HP and attack, obviously for that Trick Room mode, and we were focusing on giving it Rock Slide because honestly there was a lot of RSD4's Pokemon were weak to Rock, and while they are a bit slower in your standard field, having it show up in Trick Room means that we could potentially get flinches on top of that. We did Wave Crash for coverage, and Avalanche also covered a lot of the weaknesses that they had. Obviously, the 4x weakness into Dragonite. Catching them off guard in a regular field could be nice. Our final Pokemon is the Tinglu. We brought that with the Terra Ghost so that we could answer the Fake Out from the Iron Hands. Like I said, Rock Slide just to cover weaknesses, Taunt in order to be able to answer my opponent's Trick Room if I pair it with the Galarian Zapdos and I don't want them to be able to set up their own Trick Room and slow things down if I leave Golden Go or Gouging Fire in the back, right? Throw Chops for coverage, a lot of damage, and a way to answer both Fergaraf and Blood Moon Ursaluna's sound-based attacks. Overall, our team is looking good though. Very defense-oriented, kind of pretty much what I expected to bring in this first week. I definitely like how things are going with this one, and we'll see how the games turn out here in a moment. Looking back at this, I got a couple options. What they have is the possibility of bringing Dragonite to Tailwind or Fergaraf to Trick Room. So I'm thinking I can either match them with a slow mode by bringing Dondozo, and either going Dondozo Gouging Fire or Tinglu Gouging Fire, right? But my initial reaction is to start with Tailwind, and Zapdos has Covert Cloak, so it can't be interrupted with Fake Out, and I could always use Gouging Fire. And then I just want to do as much damage as possible in this first match, kind of catch my opponent off guard. So I'm going to bring Golden Go, Sinistea. Alright, so they lead Fergaraf Iron Hands, so they did go with the Trick Room mode. Now I'm thinking one of two things here. They could try for Fake Out, knowing that I have Gouging Fire, Burning Bulwark, or I'm not worried about having my covert cloak. I'm not worried about getting flinched with fake out in the Zapdos slot. What I am worried about is Wild Charge from Iron Hands. So I'm gonna... Here I try to predict and double up into the Farigiraf. Because if I can get rid of that, then there's no Trick Room for them, right? But they do in fact go for the fake out, and so no burn, and they get to set up Trick Room. Which kind of puts me in a tough position. From here, it's just trying to mitigate some of the damage by Breaking Swipe. We can reduce Iron Hand's attack, and going for a coaching into the Gouging Fire slot. Like I mentioned last time, I am worried about something like a Psychic or a Wild Charge into my Zapdos slot, and rather than switching out, I'm just gonna try and power up the Gouging Fire so that I can survive. So we commit our Terra here with Terra Fire. So Terra Fire, they just go for essentially a double up into the Zapdos slot, so we kind of already committed our Terra, which is a little rough, losing that so quickly. There isn't much to do outside of just hitting them with a Breaking Swipe. They get a boost from the Throat Spray, which we saw coming. So we're able to lower Iron Hand's attack a bit. And going into Sinistea here means that we can heal up our Gouging Fire. Since they've already shown Hyper Voice, it's a question of what other offensive attacks do they have. I want to continue reducing the Iron Hand's attack, so I'm thinking there are still 3 turns of Trick Room, and another Breaking Swipe isn't a bad idea to try and get rid of the Farigiraf. I could reverse the Trick Room. My Sinistea is kind of fast, so reversing the Trick Room wouldn't be bad, but I really want to do as much damage as possible here and potentially get a burn onto the Iron Hands, which they commit their Terra. The Grass Terra is likely to try and avoid Rage Powder, right? Going for a close combat into Gouging Fire, reducing their defenses, which is nice for us. Shadow Ball is quite painful onto the Sinistea, but we do have Citrus Berry to heal back up, and it's just a question of, with Matcha Gotcha and Breaking Swipe, is it enough damage? And the Matcha Gotcha does get there. So Breaking Swipe does a bit more damage now. And that is a very weak Iron Hands. So the idea is to target down whatever else they bring out next. And still being in Trick Room, it's kind of tough with Ursaluna. So we're going to try and stall out a turn and heal back up. Yeah, I think committing Life Dew here and protecting Gouging Fire from potential damage. I mean, they could switch out the they could switch out the Iron Hands, but either way, we need to stall out this Trick Room because we're with With Golden Go in the back, we're obviously a lot faster. Especially because they just committed a close combat, they're probably looking to take out the gouging fire, and being able to burn them is going to just further reduce that attack stat. Blood Moon comes through, and Sinistrea's definitely gone with a critical hit there. So we're in a bit of a tough spot with only Golden Go and Gouging Fire remaining, and still have something in the back to deal with, but it's the last turn of Trick Room, so I've got to kind of hope to survive this last turn, so I'm literally committing both of my stat boosts with a Dragon Dance and a Nasty Plot here. It's kind of high risk, high reward. If they go for a more defensive play with Iron Hands, only all those stat reductions. So they do withdraw the Iron Hands, and that does leave me in a okay position, but the Hyper Voice is enough to take out both. And that is quite unfortunate, because that only leaves us with Golden Go, but we do get the Nasty Plot off. Trick Room is over, and so we can commit a Dazzling Gleam, and if they're Inner Focus as opposed to Multi-Scale, there is a chance we can do a decent amount of damage. If we can take out Dragonite and survive a Earth Power, then there's a chance for us. And that, honestly, crit on Ursaluna almost takes it out. We lose a bit of life from our Life Orb. We're faster than Dragonite, so Tailwind unfortunately means that with that Earth Power, we just lose the game. And unfortunately, we had a connection issue, so the game ends there, and we just go straight into game 2. Starting things off, we need to find a way to interact with our opponent's Trick Room mode. Leading Ting-Lu here. And Golden Go can also interact really well with the Iron Hands Fake Out. So it's just a question of bringing the most damage in the back with our Gouging Fire and Zapdos. They decided to go with the same lead, bringing further out and Iron Hands. Looking at this lead again, we have to consider if they're going to use the Fake Out onto our Ting-Lu and try and set up that Trick Room again. With our Vessel of Ruin, if they do decide to go on the offensive, we have a bit of special defense debuff, so we decide to commit our Terra and Terra Ghost the Ting-Lu in order to prevent that Fake Out, and then try to set up with Golden Go, and because they won't be able to get off the Trick Room, maybe we can get a big attack in on the following turn. So we use our Terra Ghost, like I said. Neither of one of my Pokemon now can be faked out, which I'm sure they know. We're faster. Setting up the nasty plot, really straightforward. They decide to go for a Shadow Ball, and big damage comes through. The Shadow Ball crits, and with that and a Wild Charge, we lose our Golden Go pretty quickly. We've committed our Terra and lost one of our Pokemon. It's a really rough start for us. But we do get the taunt off, which does mean that Trick Room isn't coming through for a few turns. I decide to go with the Galarian Zapdos as a way to either get some damage in or power up our Tinglu with the Vessel of Ruin ability active. So we decide to go for a Throat Chomp into Farigiraf. Does the most damage, and then spread things out in case they try to do a switch or protect and get in some damage into the Iron Hands. Our Zapdos is pretty fast. So we get the Brave Bird in and we deal a decent chunk of damage to Iron Hands. Shadow Ball comes through, and like I said, with our Vessel of Ruin active and our defense boost, our special defense boost, not much damage coming in. But the real problem is Wild Charge. Being super effective and us not having a defensive Terra there kind of puts us in a bad position, even with the recoil from that Wild Charge. We're down to 2 Pokemon to their 4, and we've got to really commit something here. So Gouging Fire comes in, Photosynthesis activates, we get a attack boost here. Now it's just a question of how much damage can we do with the remaining turns of that taunt. So we go for a Rock Slide and commit the Rock Slide, but it's just a question of, do we Burning Bulwark here in hopes to cut Iron Hand's attack? And with that Burning Bulwark, we can potentially burn Iron Hands here. Obviously, Tinglu can take a few more Shadow Balls from this Farigiraf, so it's just about maintaining this team and trying to keep it as healthy as possible. So, Burning Bulwark comes through, another Shadow Ball, lose a small chunk, not too bad. A little over half, and there it is. Gouging Fire protects itself, so Iron Hands is burnt. Rock Slide comes through and doesn't quite get the kill on Farigiraf, but the hope is now we can take that out this turn and potentially start setting up a little bit. I mean, it's the last turn of Taunt. So protect Tinglu and try and set up a Dragon Dance, because they've Shadow Balled twice into that slot. They might attempt to switch out the Iron Hands here. It's just a question of, do they want another chance at Fake Out, or do they want to commit to letting me set up? Iron Hands gets withdrawn. In comes Ursaluna. And our Protect goes through. Obviously, Tinglu's pretty good in this situation. Attack and speed boosts being raised. And yeah, we protect the Tinglu from taking a bit more damage. Taunt's over, so now we have to answer the potential of them getting off Trick Room, but I'm not too worried about it. We're able to hit both with a breaking swipe, and the idea is to throat chop Ursaluna so that next turn they can't follow it up with a Hyper Voice. It's just a question of how much damage can we prevent from them and how much more can we do to the remaining members of their team. So Breaking Swipe comes through, knocks out Friggorath. Decent chunk on Ursaluna. So Earth Power comes through, and honestly I'm surprised at how much damage it does there. Heavy investment into special attack, super effective damage, but we get the Throat Chop off, and because it's Earth Power, that means Throat Chop isn't really going to do too much. Here, we see the Ninetales come through and Snow Warning activates, so here I'm looking at trying to do as much damage as possible, and the question is, do we go into Ursaluna or do we go into Ninetales? Which one are they going to commit the Terra to? If we get the Heat Crash onto Ninetales, it could potentially knock it out, but I think if we are able to get a Rock Slide and Heat Crash onto this Ursaluna before it Earth Powers us, we might be in an okay position. So they commit their Terra, and unfortunately for us, it does end up on the Ursaluna. Terra Water, so that Heat Crash isn't going to do too much, and it does mean we're going to have a hard time keeping our Gouging Fire around. So it doesn't do too much. Blizzard comes through. Unfortunately, knocks out the Gouging Fire. And that leaves us with our Tinglu to eat up a Blood Moon, thanks to that Mind's Eye ability. So we lose our Blood Moon, we lose our Tinglu, and we lose the game 3-1, which, unfortunate, but RSD played really well, and that's how the games go sometimes. So it was a good match overall, and I'm definitely happy with our team. We just needed to maybe fine-tune it a bit more. But thanks for watching. Thanks for seeing all our free agents, and we'll catch you next week.